Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. And tonight we're going to be talking about experiencing your empowering feminine energy. And the reason that I talk about it is experiencing because so often we can have something in our head. We can have the idea, we can have the knowledge of it, but until we really embody it, it's not going to be working for us. And the feminine energy, as the Dalai Lama talks about, it's going to be women that are actually going to be the saviors of the world. What I always talk about the fact is the woman has to save herself first. And in study after study, women will self-report themselves in order of importance, number 5. It'll be their significant other, it'll be their children, their career, pets, and then themselves. And so we have to be able to shift that. And experiencing your feminine power, I'm going to be talking about the 7 major archetypes for feminine. I'm going to be talking about the maiden, the lover, the queen, the huntress, the sage, and the mystic. And with all of those, we know that there's an absolutely incredible power to those, but we also know that there's a detraction too. And so we want to be able to live in either that power or in the middle. We don't want to go into that negative aspect. And the negative aspect is it's usually the same thing for everybody. When we start to overserve and overserve, what ends up happening is we end up draining our energy and we go into that negative aspect. We go into that losing aspect. And so what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to keep ourselves high. And so when we talk today, some of the things that I'm going to talk about is what blocks your happiness. And people think, well, happiness, it's like, okay, how do I have time? When do I have time to be happy? And it's like, okay, hold on a second. We have to really, really look at this because if you look at Abraham Hicks and they talk about vibration, or if you look at Napoleon Hill, he talks about strength and happiness and joy and being able to see forward. Wallace Wattles talks about being able to experience the vibration and the experience and the witnessing the truth of what's already happening, being able to see the evidence. And in order to be able to do that, in order to see the evidence, we have to be able to look at it and it's like, okay, well, if we see the evidence of a car accident, for example, we're going to feel that. We're going to feel that down. Okay. But if we see the experience just, an hour or so ago, the rainbow was wide. I mean, it was a wide, wide rainbow. And I was like, whoa, to see one that wide, it was just amazing. But I could feel that vibration. And so we want to look to see what are the things that block your happiness. And we also want to look as we go through this, I want you to take some notes for yourself. It's like, okay, what parts of each of these archetypes really give you an increased power? Which of these archetypes make me feel like, yeah, that's me. That's really me. That's my recipe. What do we feel in that? And then when we look at this, when we think about blocking our happiness, again, so often, too often, people think, well, how do I have the time to be happy? When do I have the time to be happy? I got to get to work. I got to pay the bills. I got to take care of the kids. I got to take care of this. I got to take care of that. But if we look at blocking happiness as in blocking all of everything, it's blocking the success in love. It's blocking the success of regular relationships. And it's definitely blocking the success in finances. And so when we look at that, love, relationships, and finances, and I didn't even mention health, if we're not happy, I was working with a client 2 days ago, and this woman's like, I got to. And I'm like, hold on. And I says, what's the last thing that you remember where you pause and you think, oh, wow, this is great. This is great. I feel happy. This is awesome. And she sat there. And I says, keep on. And at about 2.5 or 3 minutes, I says, okay, can you see how this is an issue? And I says, as you were trying to feel and remember your happiness, you could feel the saliva in your mouth go. You could feel the saliva in your nose dry up. And I says, you've just felt your body tighten up and you had more of a pit in your stomach than you had the joy. And she realized that was the absolute truth. So the profoundly living, I have my arms up in the air often. Okay. And yeah, that reminds me of the very first time that my daughter saw me. I was sick her entire life. until she was 5.5 years old. And the first time that I was able to go someplace and I didn't need oxygen, she, threw up her arms, Daddy, Daddy, no oxygen. So it's certainly that, but profoundly living is we have to be able occasionally to be able to say, yeah, my life totally rocks. Because if we can't do that, I can guarantee your finances are going to suck. At least they're not going to be where you want them to be. And your relationships are going to be something that you feel like you have to work more at it. Does this make sense? Can everybody agree? Then can I see a show of hands, or you can even raise your hand on, okay. Yeah, these are the things that we want to be able to come into grips. So what is going to make me feel the happiness? And in a little bit, we're going to talk about sex, money, food, play, and then we're going to talk about harm and punishment. And we're going to talk about these things because what we want to look at is what are the things that really, really, really help my energy, and what are the things that I'm not even aware of, that catch me off guard, that take the energy away. Okay. And so, but before we begin, I want you to think about these. You can write them down if you want. We're going to talk about the maiden. The maiden energy is effervescent, compassionate, youthful, always kind of in awe and things like that. But and there's going to be in the maiden, there's going to be an inner strength. There's going to be kind of an already knowing connection to Creator. But the maiden, in her weakness, is going to be very codependent, and she's going to be predilected to bad relationships, harmful relationships. Because when we get awe and we stay out here and we look at it, what ends up happening is when we do that, the negative is going to be down here. So we want to look at that maidenness, like, okay, and we want to look to see too, because if we're over compassionate, and how are you, if that's what we're doing, if that's what we're thinking, what's going to happen is we're going to be like this, instead of really looking and feeling ourselves, we're going to be looking away at others. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay, cool. And then the next is the lover. And the lover is an amazing aspect, because the lover, just like I talked about the rainbow, I'm sitting there and, we're watching TV, eating dinner, and I could see it out of the side of my eye. I was just like, oh, wow. And I was just getting, just really, really getting excited about that. And so lover is that, lover is going to love anything in nature, things like that, food, but lover is going to be the magnetic aspect. Lover is going to have that internal vibe that just kind of flows, and people are like, hey, what is that? I want some of that. It's going to be magnetic. It can be erotic. It's definitely going to be creative. And very often it's going to be physically creative, because there's a desire for what is and what's next. And so that's the lover in a lot of good ways. The lover in the drain is the lack of focus. The lack of focus definitely on the self. But the lover also can be very, very vain. Okay, because if the lover is out there trying to be love and catch love and all that kind of thing, the lover is going to be kind of sometimes stuck on herself. If she's not feeling secure, she's going to be stuck on herself, and she's going to feel the need to, I have to this, I have to that, I got to be better at this, I got to be better at that. And does that make sense for everybody? And and so I'm going to see if everybody could mute themselves. I hear a little bit of background noise. And um, so the vanity, and then the fragile esteem. Because when we're so caught up, and I have in the male version, I definitely have a lot of the lover in me. But I get so caught up in other things that sometimes I forget to feed my own. And so I'm sure that you guys can sense this and agree with this. And then the next is the queen. And the queen is so, so often misunderstood. The queen is loyal, and the queen is not below. She might be seen as shorter than the king and everything like that, but that's because women are typically shorter than men. She's not on any kind of platform that's less than the king. She's going to be on the same platform, chair sitting next to the king, because she's going to be loyal, and it's going to be her joy to be loyal. She's not going to be subservient. She's not going to kowtow. Oh, yes, dear. Oh, yes, dear. No, no, no. That's not a queen. The queen is basically, this is my person, this is my significant other, or sometimes it can be even the career. You can see it sometimes when queens are like, hey, this is my gem. This is what I'm offering the world. This is what I see. This is my passion. And that's loyalty, leadership, but co-leadership. A queen is going to be one of those where it's like, okay, so tell me about that. What's your idea? Oh, okay, that's interesting. Huh, what do I think? And the queen's going to decipher, do I want to follow this or do I not want to follow this? And the queen is very, very powerful. She's going to basically, when the king is out of alignment, or the board is out of alignment, the queen's going to say, it's like, dear, you're missing some clothes, or you guys are way off track. So those are the strong parts of the queen. The detractions is when the queen's not feeling her real self, her strong self. She's going to feel jealousy. She might be incredibly vindictive. And it's one of those things where they say, there's nothing like, a woman scorned. Well, piss off a queen and you're going to know. Piss off a queen and everybody's going to know. And this is something where you see in social media and such like that, where when somebody gets hurt, boom, they just blow everybody out of the water. And the reason I'm talking about these is I want you to be able to see what are the fine points of each of these for me. What are the best things about it? Is it that I'm a great co-leader or leader? Is it great, that I'm loyal? What are the things about me that stay true in this? And so Elisa from Lorali, it's something where you're an excellent version of the queen because you're king. You're sitting there and it's like, okay, I'm championing for you. I got you. Everything is just fantastic. Honey, it's like, and a queen is going to take the king aside and it's like in private and basically say, hey, I think we could do this. I think we could do that. And it's just like, you're doing this really, really well, but this and not so much. And that's the thing that we want to look at is because in no way does life tell us that we can be able to handle this. In no way does life be able to, and I just saw that I didn't let somebody on, a bummer. I just missed that. So Elisa, if you can watch that a little bit, I don't know if she'll come back, but I lost my train of thought when that happened. But so again, the queen, jealousy, vindictive, and then never enough. This is something where you can see, because if the queen doesn't have that co-support, if that queen can't look up to and feel gracious and feel like she's doing the right thing, if that can't happen, she's going to feel down. She's going to feel less than. She's not going to feel her purpose. And that's the part that, as we go through this, I'm going to ask you all a little later. What parts of the maiden do you really rock on? What parts of the lover are really you? What parts of the mother are really the queen? And now the sage. The sage is a really interesting one. And this is something that I've had to work with on myself because the sage is worldly, wisdom, strategy, and objective. But the sage can also be frigid, closed off essentially, and feel like I have to do it. I'm the one that has to do it, and can really get cloistered and really closed. And because the sage, when people get tripped up being the sage, it's like, I got to fix it. It's up to me. How do I do this? And really, really goal oriented. And so what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to look and think, okay, hold on a second. I definitely don't want to feel frigid. I don't want people to feel cold in my presence. I don't want people to feel like I'm difficult to get along with or talk with. Okay. I don't want them to think that here I am, this and mighty one, and I'm running the business and everything is fine. And it's just like, okay, yeah, whatever, we don't want people to see us like that. What we want people to do is we want to be able to say, oh, wow, look at that wise one. Damn, she's kicking ass. And it's like, oh, wow, she's really cool. Oh, she takes some time for herself. She takes some time for herself to really, to think and then interject and act and react. And so we want to watch that frigidity and that closed off sensually. And because the closed off sensually, if we think about it and we have our business idea, okay, why the hell do you do your business? Seriously. You do your business because it does something to jazz you up. You do your business because it's like, this is cool, this is awesome. And sensually, it really, really rocks. And this is so important because the second chakra is all about sexuality, creativity, and hormones. And so we want to be able to have that creativity. We want to be able, and um, and when we think about it, the sexuality, the creativity, and the hormones, it's like, okay, the hormones, we know that if those aren't right, our body's not going to be okay. Our emotions aren't going to be okay. And then also our connection to creator is going to be off. Because if we're not feeling good, if we're stuck in the reason that I talked about this with the feminine energy is you can look at it, and I want people to, give me a yes, no, shout out, have you seen women friends, whether you're teenagers going into your 20s, where they had the PMS, they had the cramps and the bloating, and they were either just no fun to hang out with, or you almost looked at them and you were afraid to catch what they had because they were in such misery. So anybody ever had a friend like that? Yeah. Okay. When my sister, when she was going through that, it was just like, whoa, I just stayed way the heck away. And but we want to look at this and it's like, we have the opportunity to fine tune the whole system. Because if we fine tune the whole system, you're not going to have the cramps. You're not going to have the PMS. You're not going to have the bloating. You're not going to have the excessive bleeding. And if you're in perimenopause or menopause, you're not going to have the mood swings. You're not going to have the hot flashes. You're not going to have the night sweats. And you're definitely not going to have no libido. Because if you are really in flow with yourself, everything is possible. Is this making sense to people? Does anybody have questions about that last part at least? Okay. Some of the things that people will ask is like, okay, what can I do when I have the hot flashes? What can I do when I'm having, these? Because, there's a friend of mine, and when she has the hot flashes, it's like, holy wow. You just sit there and you watch, and all of a sudden she just literally starts dripping in sweat, and she, her shirt gets all bad and everything like that. And by then she usually starts to excuse herself, and she has to go through this hot flash for, anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, sometimes longer. And when she's done, it's going to look like she went swimming in her clothes. She's that sweaty. Well, I talk with her and it's like, hey, how do you feel as that feminine? And this is the part where we got to look at it as like, how do we feel as that feminine? Do we feel, and I'm going to go back and finish up with the mystic in a second here so we can have all the 7 archetypes, but are we feeling safe? Can you feel like this is me, this is my expression? And when I say this is my expression, this is between you and your mirror, okay? You in your bedroom, you in your car. You don't have to go out and tell anybody that this is me, okay? You accept me. It's like, no. I saw, goodness sakes, it was Michael. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on him today. And he was talking, he had a post on Instagram. It was Michael from the Oscar gifting party there. And he was talking about the fact that the most hated man in America was himself. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is interesting because I know this guy's got a very, very colorful history. And I was just like, oh, wow, what did he do? Is he like Ray Lewis, shot somebody or what? And he realized, he says, the most hated man in history was himself because he had such harsh judgment against himself. He hated himself so bad that it didn't matter if anybody else in the entire world loved him because he had the judgment upon himself. And so this we want to look at. And with women, yeah, I can see some people, reaching the third eye. And it's just like, yep, yep, ding, 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 ding. Our body will so often tell us, when I say things like that, people itch their third eye, their nose, because their nose knows, or they'll come back here to the neck, because back here in the neck, this is so often living from your truth. And so if we're not in harmony with ourselves, this happened to a dear friend of ours this weekend. The woman's going through a lot of life struggles, and she feels like she has to justify. She feels like she never measures up. She ended up in the hospital having heart episodes. And if we are not on our side, if we're not in compassion with ourselves, if we're not in love with ourselves, if we're not in trust with ourselves, then our body's going to be off kilter. Okay. And I'm going to say the mystic, and then I'm going to come right back to this because I didn't want to leave one out. So the mystic is confidence, creativity, inner peace, soulful. And it's very, very interesting because so often now you see women running around, very, very mystical, flowing gowns, drums, rattles, singing, and almost fairy-like behavior in some ways. And it's really wonderful and fantastic in some ways, because having that confidence and having that creativity, that connection with Creator, and feeling that in your soul is fantastic. But when it gets to the point where that mystic becomes social isolation, only people that look like me, sound like me, get to be my friends. You got to be soulful. You got to be, airy, fairy, flowy like me, and then you can be my friend. Emotional rigidity. You don't meditate like me. You don't chant like me. It's like, who do you go for your healer? That kind of stuff. Those are, and it's very, very interesting because the closer we get to spiritual, the closer we get to Creator, very, very often the closer to the dark side, the judgment, whether self-judgment or judgments against others. And so the mystic we want to look at is because the least of it is just simple introvert. And, and sometimes it's just basically can't handle other people's energy, which is fine. You got to be able to take care of yourself. But if it's an introvert to the point where you don't get out and you don't share your light with other people, that's something that's not a positive thing. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay, cool. Excuse me. So I'm going to go back to the flow. And the reason that this subject is so dear to me, and it's the thing that I teach the most about, is ignite your radiant soul, experience your feminine energy, experience your feminine intuition, is because the beauty that happens is so amazing and so majestic and so awesome. And for me, it's really, really wild. I just had this opportunity to go out to LA, and there was all these beautiful people, and celebrities and such like that. But it was wild because the two people that were to support me, Elisa was one of them, and my friend Tina, they would notice that all of a sudden I would turn. I'd be in a conversation or something like that, and I would turn, and I could feel somebody back here. I could feel their energy. And I was like, okay, I need to meet that person. I need to talk to that person. I need to feel what's going on. And because that inner radiance that people have, we vibe to certain people. And it was really fantastic because there was two gentlemen, and one of them, I was just like, okay, who in the heck is that guy? And when I found out his story, I'm like, whoa. And there was another one, and I'm just like, I said, this is really weird, man. I says, besides the fact that you're taller than most people in this room, you must really feel like you stick out like a sore thumb, because every single thing about him was seeing the dynamic light in other people. And so this is what we want to be able to cultivate inside you, because what on earth is the feminine energy? So when I say feminine energy, does anybody want to, take themselves off mute for a second and say what you think feminine energy means to you? What it feels like to you? Anybody?
I can.
Okay.
Um, to me, it feels like sensual, secure, confident, and pure spiritual connection with God.
Okay. Cool. Well, in a little bit, I'm going to ask you again, and I'm going to say, it's like, okay, which of the archetypes do you think are two or three of your top archetypes? And when you look at them, I want you to see what are the best characteristics of them, and then what are the detracting characteristics that you pick up too. Okay. Cool. Thank
Okay.
you. Is there anybody else that would like to share? Okay. Susie? Okay.
Yes, we can share.
Okay, great. Both of you. Super.
Feminine energy feels like to me, like when you're in your flow, like you're just loving doing what you're doing, and you're doing it because from the joy for doing it, not because you have to do it. So I think that comes out differently for everybody. For me, it's cooking. When I want to cook, and I'll bounce around the kitchen. I'll cook 5 things at once. I will only eat one of them. I don't need to cook 5 things, but when you're in that flow and you're just feeling it, feels really good.
Awesome. And how about you, Cass?
Yeah, I'm really well, Joe. Um, yeah, I would agree with both what Alyssa and Suze have said, that it feels like when everything is easy, and I can feel it in my lower back when I actually am in flow and am feeling like myself and feeling in joy. All of the tension releases from my lower back, and I know specifically certain times when I felt like that. And there was one time I went through multiple rounds of IVF, and my back and shoulders and everything was really tense for a very long time. And I remember this one time when I actually relaxed properly and felt truly within myself, and everything just relaxed, and my lower back it almost like spasmed, and I went, so yeah, that kind of feeling. And I know I don't sit in it frequently, but more and more recently I've been I guess probably sitting in my feminine energy and operating from that space, and it feels amazing.
Cool. And this is some of the stuff, I'm glad that you actually mentioned, some of the body areas that you really could feel the flow in, because in that low back area, it's going to be connection to the chakras. It's going to be the safety and security of the first, and it's going to be the sexuality, the creativity, and the hormones. And the creativity is something that is everything that you like, everything that you enjoy, everything that makes you feel you. And so when you're in that flow, yeah, your whole body's going to be better. And this is the part that I want everybody to understand tonight, is that we want to be able to find out all the ways to be able to bring the body into flow, all the ways to bring the body into harmony. And we have to be able to catch the things that's like, oh, I see that. I feel that. That's taken me out of the harmony. That's taken me out of the flow. Because it's something where everybody knows what it's like. You think, oh God, look at it. It's a beautiful sunny day. And you go outside, whoa, it's freezing outside. Okay. Well, just because it's beautiful and it's sunny, you're not going to continue to go out there. You're going to like, okay, I got to go back in the house and get a sweater or a coat, or I got to put long pants on. You're going to take care of yourself, of course. So if we understand our triggers, if we understand the glitches, if you will, the negative aspects of the archetypes, if we understand those, oh wow, I'm in this conversation with this person, and I'm really starting to feel kind of rigid and frigid. I'm feeling like my way is the only way. I'm really not really comfortable about this. And I'm feeling just, stubborn, or I'm feeling, like I want to isolate. When we start to realize those, it's like, oh, okay, cool. And I should have mentioned this earlier, that whenever I cough, it's things that really need to be talked about. So give me a second here. And so, too often in the world, we think that we always have to be on. Always got to be perfect. The sun is always got to be shining. The moon's always got to be full. We think that about ourselves. And it's one of the biggest disservices to ourselves completely. Because Creator made it so the sun rises and the sun sets, the tide ebbs and the tide flows. Okay. Every plant, even down here in Florida, it has it where it's in full bloom, and then it also loses its leaves or it loses its flowers. But as human beings, we got to think it's like, oh, I got to be in bloom all the time. I can't, show any weaknesses. I can't have any weaknesses. But instead of seeing them as weaknesses, well, the sun's setting. Do we sit there and cut your sun, you lousy creep? What the heck? How come you're, we wouldn't do anything that, I mean, why would we do that? Why would low tide? What's wrong with you, for God's sakes? We wouldn't do anything that to the low tide. We would just know that this is nature. So why, when we quote unquote have our low tide, why, when we have our waning moon, do we get upset at ourselves? And this is one of the things we want to look. Is like, okay, hold on a second. Don't I deserve that grace? Don't I deserve that benefit? Is this ringing true? Does this make sense for everybody? Show me. All right, cool. Cass, I can, every so often when you put up your arm, I can see your arm. Otherwise, there you go. I see the side of your head. so, and so what I want to do is I'm going to go back to, what blocks our happiness. And, what I was just talking about is the self-judgment. The self-judgment is one of the biggest things that really negatively affects us. And this is something that when I was ill, I had oodles and oodles and oodles of testing. And they hooked me up to biofeedback machines. They hooked me up to EKG. They hooked me up to all these different things that would feel the sensations of my body. And then what they would do is they would have me, the psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever, would ask me different things and look to see how my body was responding. And as I would go into the fear, or if I would go into the judgment, of course, certain things would drop, whatever. Well, I was fighting to have enough oxygen in my body. When I was going into that self-judgment, my oxygen level started to drop, okay? We were looking at the circulation of my body. When I would go into judgment, my circulation decreased significantly. My temperature in my outer extremities dropped just because I was judging myself. And so this we want to look at. And with women, you guys are under so much more difficulty because there's so much more social judgment, with everything, now it's, you got to have the big eyelashes. Okay. And then, fillers, Botox, breast augmentation, I'm too skinny, I'm too fat, I'm too tan, I'm not tan enough. All of these different things. There was a client that I had, and the abuse that this young girl started to really experience at a high level was when she was 13 and 14 years old. Her mom was Native American and her dad was Greek and Italian. And so in the spring of the year, when she would go to the country club, she already had a tan. Well, it wasn't her tan, it was her natural complexion. But the judgment that she got from other women for looking so tan and looking so quote unquote beautiful, she got so much judgment. She was ostracized so badly that she could never fit in. And so, again, when I cough, women, you get to have all the accoutrements in the world, anything that you want. You can color your hair, you can have the eyelashes, you can do the Botox, you can do all of it, as long as it's coming from something, hey, this feels good. This feels good. I feel like a little bit more special. I feel I like how I look in the mirror. Okay, cool. But if you're doing it because you're not enough, you don't look enough, she's got more, she's got less. If you're doing it from that reason, it's going to change your biology. And this is why I talk about how your feminine energy is either going to support or it's going to detract from your body's essence. So very, very often, especially in the younger girls, when they start to have their period, very, very often they don't feel like other people. They don't feel like that girl or that girl. She doesn't feel as pretty as this, or as, strong as this, as successful as that. There was one girl that everything was great, except, in her life was wonderful, except for the fact that she wasn't that good in playing volleyball. She wanted to be that volleyball player, but everybody else was better than her. that's when her self-judgment really started to happen, because she started to look and say, well, they're a little bit taller than me. They're a little bit skinnier than me. And so she started to go into the bulimia. She started to do all these different things in order to feel okay. And her period just went off the charts, cramps up the wazoo, either zero bleeding or bleeding like a geyser. And so when I sat down and talked with her and her mother, I'm like, okay, hold on a second. What can we do to feel right in here? Because whatever we feel in here is going to control every single thing in your genitals. If we're not feeling strong in here, if we're not feeling compassion in here, your body, your yoni, is going to bitch and complain all day long. Does this make sense? Does this bring questions up for anybody? Okay, cool.
Well, I didn't really ever know that the heart and the yoni were connected. I thought it was the throat.
Well, that's an excellent, total excellent point, because each of us experiences strength and abilities in different ways, and compassion in different ways. So, Elisa, for you, for example, you speaking up your truth, when you can't speak your truth, it's something like this, and so if you can't speak your truth, you're not going to feel strong. You're not going to feel happy. Your body's going to go like this, and your body shuts down fast when you feel judged, when you feel ridiculed, and especially if you're doing it to yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so, other people, when it's the heart, and so that was an example of you when you're strong in your throat chakra, everything is cool. Okay, because you can be you, you can be safe. Okay, that's for you. That's fantastic. This young woman that I was talking about, for her, she didn't feel love. She didn't feel compassion. And then at home, she didn't feel the love and the compassion either, because her mom thought she needed to do this better, do that better, do her chores better. If you do your chores and if you'd help out around the house, because the mom had her own shit around that aspect. Her husband never thought she was doing enough and everything like that. And so, of course, she's going to come to her daughter and tell her daughter that she's never doing enough, never good enough. So the daughter felt this ripping in here, and then with her dad, it was something she could never get any kind of compassion, any kind of empathy from her father. So her whole life she was clamoring. It's like, how can I get some? And so since she couldn't have anything in here, of course, in her yoni, because your yoni, whether you want to call it vagina, vulva, it doesn't matter. But I like yoni because it doesn't have the tag so much. But it's also, when you really look at what yoni means, your yoni is your center of intuition. It is your temple of life. And it's also the place that Creator put a plethora of nerves that are only there for pleasure. They serve no other purpose except pleasure. And when they're feeling that pleasure, when they're feeling that safety, then everything else in your body is going to be okay. Has anybody experienced that when you're feeling in love, or, let's just put romantic love on the side? If you've gone on a vacation and it's a beautiful place and you're experiencing the sand, you're experiencing the waves, and you're experiencing the sun, do you feel all special and extra and energized? Yeah, yeah. Okay. That's what we want to be able to do, is how do we do this every day? What can we do to be able to bring some happiness in here? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the stuff where the reason that I do the coaching is because we very, very often, we can't see the things that block our own happiness. We can't see those traumas that we have, and like a big perfect example, when you're thinking about love, Elisa, would you have thought about your throat? Not necessarily. You would have thought about your heart possibly, but it's like, okay, when your throat's jamming, you're going to know that you're safe. You're going to know that you're secure, and you're going to know that you're a friend of your own self. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so this is what we want to do, is we want to find out, how do we really know and experience our happiness? And so I talked about the sex, the money, the food, the play, and then the harm and the punishment. Okay. And people think that sex, money, food, and play are independent of each other. Yes and no. Because the second chakra is about all of these. The second chakra is the creativity. It's every single thing that you like. It's every single thing that you enjoy. Okay. And so who doesn't like having a little bit of extra money? Extra money can be meaning you go out to dinner more often. It means that you can go, to the Kravis Center and watch, an incredible show or musician or play, something like that. Extra money means that you can go see your kids more often, whatever, and the sex, when you're having the sex, and this is something where when I work with women, it is so amazing the number of women that don't pleasure themselves. And I'm like, okay, creator give you a whole lot of nerves down there, and the only thing that they're there for is pleasure. You're saying, no, it's like, okay, you know, I'm good, and we want to look to see, it's like, okay, why would we walk away from that? And because especially when you're self-pleasuring, if you're walking away from the self-pleasure, it's because of other past harm and past hurts. I would love to be loved, but love sucks. Okay. I would love to be loved. It'd be really, really nice to be loved, but when I am loved, they break my heart. Does anybody ever resonate with that? And so now it's like, okay, let's go in. Oh, really? Self-pleasure. Well, when I think about self-pleasure, I think about the last time that I had my heart broken, or I think about wanting to be in somebody else's arms. I think about wanting somebody's breath on my neck, And so what we have to be able to do is, I tell people, it's like, as long as you're saying no to something, and I'm open to the comments. I saw some gestures there. If you want to comment, I'm totally cool with it. But we want to be in neutrality with anything. Because I was talking with somebody earlier this week, and she says, so what's the big deal about this feminine energy and everything like that? And I said, well, you'd get your libido back. Okay. You would feel luscious again. You would feel gorgeous. You would feel sexy. You looking in the mirror, you'd be able to feel that. And she goes, you mean I'd actually want to have sex with somebody? I could have sex with somebody? I says, is that your jam? Hell yes. But what we have to do is we have to have that flow. We have to be able to have that flow in order to be able to work. And this is something that if you look at some of the best literature, the true literature about Tantra and other things, they'll talk about blissful manifestation. They'll talk about the fact that when you're in bliss, you're going to be able to manifest a whole lot more, a whole lot easier, because your vibration's high, your vibration's good. And on top of it, if you're in bliss, you haven't said to yourself. And those are technical terms. So, because if you're sitting there to yourself, really, you're going to be attractive to somebody else? I don't think so. And so everybody take some breath, and I'm going to do some clearing here. And anybody that hasn't done it, please go to my website, and on there is, you just click give your email, and it's going to be a video, and it's going to be a PDF for energy mastery power positions. Because there's 3 of the energy mastery power positions are going to affect your blood flow, definitely going to affect your hormone level, and going to affect the presence of joy and happiness and ease. Okay, all of them are really good, but 3 of them are going to really kick ass for you, and actually 4 of them. So I got to think. We get a half an hour yet here. So I'm going to recap this, and I want to have each of you give me some ideas. So the maiden is effervescent, compassion, youthful, and inner strength. That's the maiden. The maiden is also codependent and susceptible to negative relationships, harmful relationships. Okay, the lover is magnetic, erotic, creative, physical creation, notices all the outside signs of joy and such like that. The lover is also having a real lack of focus. Sometimes the vanity comes in, and definitely the fragile self-esteem. And the mother provides, safety, mental and physical safety, but she's also extremely prone to self-neglect, stubborn, lack of boundaries, and, having that cranky, nobody cares about me, nobody takes care of me, that kind of stuff. The huntress is goals, women's causes, courage, protective. Lots of times a good huntress will be a fantastic teacher, educator. The negative of the huntress is aloof. I could give a shit about anything. I don't really care, unavailable. Okay. Nobody feeds me. Why should I feed anybody else? Okay. Cruel, my way or the highway, that kind of stuff. The sage is focused on the objective. It's worldly wisdom, systems, and strategy. The negative aspect of the sage is frigidity, closed off sensually. I have to do it, that kind of stuff. So, for example, has anybody had a coach that is so focused on systems, so focused on strategy that she's like this and this and has like zero compassion? Has anybody notice a coach like that? That can happen. That's some of the negative aspects. The mystic, which is confidence, creativity, inner peace, and soulful, can be just incredible. And teachers, things like that. And like Teal Swan, she talks about the fact that at times she can be the mystic, but she goes, I'm the mystic. She goes, I'm an introvert so bad. She goes, I'm socially isolated and emotional rigidity. She goes, it takes me forever sometimes to be able to play. And so she's really worked on that to be able to get herself to be able to be that playful person, be able to really be that soulful person. So are these becoming more clear with everybody? Okay, so I'm gonna.
I have a question, Joe.
Sure.
Do you want to ask her a question?
Oh yeah.
Is it a normal? Well, is it likely that you will embody all of those different aspects of the feminine, and not be just one, two, but like through life, through the journey of maybe you were a maiden, now you stepped into the mystic, that you were also, is that possible? Or is there, how many typically do you see in one lifespan?
Yeah, you can have all of them, but it's kind of like, did you ever do the Strength Finder 2.0? Strength Finder 2.0 is a really cool book, and it talks about your 5 greatest strengths, your 5 greatest talents. And of that, we'll have 2 or 3 that are top talents, and then the other 2 or 3 are going to be the others. But we're going to have a little bit of all of them.
Okay, that was what I.
So you're going to predominantly, and this is the part where what I want you to be able to do is to really, because I'm trying to find the one that is, so the lover. Okay. Okay. So the lover, because the lover's got lack of focus. Okay. Have you ever felt lack of focus?
Me, yeah, a lot.
Yeah. So I know Elisa really, really well when we can banter back and forth, and she knows I'm lovingly teasing her. But
Yeah, but I've
we're also
become the mystic, but I've actually stepped into the mystic very much so.
yeah, and so what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to look at that, because the lover, you are magnetic. You can talk to anybody about anything. Okay. But when you're lost and you're feeling not so strong, especially about that issue that we talked about, a while ago, you started to have a little bit of the fragile esteem because it was just like, what's wrong? How come?
Yeah, and it's still happening too, by the way. So it's, yeah, but I'm not taking it in.
Well, and that's
Good
so
and
when
bad, I know.
yeah, and this is something that we want to look at, and this is seriously, this is why I coach. Okay, because if this stuff was easy, hey, I'm teaching it, boom, boom, boom. Okay, study it for a week and then you're fine, and everything's great. Well, that'd be amazing. That'd be, if we were like that, Tony Robbins, would have a, maybe $1 million business instead of a $1 billion business or multi-billion-dollar business, because he would talk to some people, they would get it done, they'd be done once, and they wouldn't need to do his platinum, diamond, super lava, programs, because
Yeah.
they'd get it in that one time. And so the reason that I coach is to be able to help get past these things. And so, yeah, you're definitely the lover because you got the magnetic. You definitely have, the eros going on, and the creativity. When you're gelling, you got the creativity going on, and the physical creation with like the Lisa's Beach Highway. You got that totally going on. When you're tired, when you're getting attacked, when people break their promises, the lack of focus really comes in, and then the vanity is something where you're not vain, but it's just like there's a part, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? There's that self crumbling, and then the self-esteem. Does that make sense for everybody? How we can be the best of this and all of a sudden, boom. Yeah, exactly. And so if I look at you, the lover, you're definitely the lover, and the maiden, there's times where you're really the maiden. And so like when you were way into the gratitude program and everything, and you were doing all that, stuff, you were focused on others so much. You were effervescent, you were compassionate, you were youthful, and you were just jazzing, but then the negative aspect of that, was codependency and, bad relationships. Okay. And so, but, and then your mother aspect, there's been times of that where you've mothered so much, it's just okay, there we go. Where's the rest of you? There wasn't the rest of you, and that's something that happens so much. And that's why empty nesting is an issue. I have loads and loads of clients that are empty nesters. But what I would look at is you do have a lot of these, and you all will have a lot of these. But what I want you to do is I want you to look at what are the 3 ones that are really my jam. Because when they're really your jam, it's like, okay, cool. When they're your jam, do they jam you up? Okay. Because for me, for example, I've had to really work on my jester. When I was in my 20s, 30s, jester was my, that was my jam. Okay. I would joke about everything. Nobody took me serious about anything. When I tried to get people to listen to me, when I was in charge, I was the leader, I was the manager. Nobody listened to me because I was always the jester. So I had to work into the point where I was the wisdom. I was the king. And for me, being the king was just like, my king was a tyrant. But when I really looked at it, my king wasn't a king. My king was the worst of the traits. And so when I started to have to own my king, that was something that was fearful, and it was in trepidation, and I never ever wanted to be that person. And so when you look at this, what I would ask you to do is I would ask you to look, it's like, well, what was my mom like? What was what were my teachers like in school? What was my grandma like? Which ones, And because my grandma on my dad's side, she was a sage, totally. I'll have to look and see if she was anything else other than the sage. She was objective, she was wise, and she was strategy, and she was definitely frigid, and she was definitely closed off. And it was definitely, I have to do it. My, paternal grandmother, she was total sage. And was she a maiden? No compassion. um, she had hints of the lover because nature really was her jam, and she loved birds and things like that, and she loved music. The mother, she was to the nth degree, but so that's that. Does that make sense for people? Is that, okay. And and then when I look at my mom, my mom was total the mother, but she was also the sage. My mom took care of everybody. She did all kinds of really creative, cool things, made everybody individual type birthday cakes. Every single year she would do a different Christmas ornament, teach us how to make Christmas ornaments. And we, did those. For Palm Sunday bake sale at church, we did this Easter bunny that actually stood up, and we decorated it. Sold, hundreds of dollars of raffle tickets when it was only $1 a piece. So my mom was all of that creative stuff. But the self-neglect and the stubbornness was really also her. And my mom, was the sage, the strategy, and the lover. When we would go to bed, sometimes she'd play the guitar. She would teach herself how to do the guitar. She taught herself how to, cut hair. She cut everybody's hair in the neighborhood, did the Farrah Fawcett hair, so she was that kind of person. But her negative aspects were the sage, she was frigid. The mom, she was self-neglect, and lack of boundaries. So are you seeing how we can have the best of things and the worst of things in the same flavor? So this is what I want you to understand. Does anybody else want to share what they think some of theirs are?
I'll share. I think
Thank you.
I think I'm the mother, and I think a bit of the lover, and maybe a bit of the mystic
Okay, so
is where
uh,
I'm at.
so Cass, just a little. Do you think your sister's a little bit of a lover, or
Probably a lot of a lover.
Exactly. And so this is the thing that gets so damn juicy, because when we think about it, it's like, okay, you're making your own deal, whether it's a cookie or you're making a dish, and you put in a little bit of different seasoning than mom or grandma did, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, now it's better than ever. Well, that's what I want you to be able to understand, because Susie, oh my God, you couldn't have your fucking company if you weren't a lover. There's no way you could do your company because you're doing it because you love. You're doing it every single time because you want these women to love themselves. And that can only be because that's who you are. And so that's what we want to be able, and this is the part where we want to see, it's like, okay, inside there is that diamond that fucking kicks ass. And if you realize that, it's like, okay, my company is led by a lover. That's my strength. Okay. I'm magnetic. You're totally erotic. I mean, you totally are in all the sensual, the best ways that you are. And then you're creative for sure. And the physical manifestation, the physical creativity, that's the lover all day long. And so with you and all the people that help your business have to understand that's where you start, and that's where you really rise and vibe and vibe and vibe. And if you keep that, you're going to go like this. Now what we have to do is we have to look. It's like, okay, who's going to keep you on focus? Because if you're a kick-ass lover, then you're going to also have that little trap door where at times when it gets a little bit of difficult, you might have that lack of focus. And and the and English kind of sucks, because the vanity and the self-esteem, you're not vain, but it's something where you know that you're responsible. And you know that the reason that you're taking on this company is because you're trying to make a whole lot of people love themselves and accept themselves. Right? Yeah.
Yes.
So if that falters, then you start to feel like you're failing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's the vanity and the self-esteem that we want to watch. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So then what we come in, and it was mother, and what was the other?
I thought maybe a bit of the mystic.
Oh, the mystic. Yeah. The mystic, the mystic is going to be that right leg over here, because we're going to be like a tripod.
Yeah.
The mystic is going to be that right leg where the confidence, yeah, you got the guts. You got the guts to stand up and say, hey, I think the way that people are doing this and the way that people are shaming people and the way that they're saying you have to look like this and you have to be like this, I think that's bull. You're having the confidence and the guts to stand up to that. And again, that mystic is creative. It's like, okay, if I'm going to come in there and I'm going to be strong in how I am, I have to be able to create something. I have to be able to bring that, magic, that wisdom to it. And then you have to be able to have the inner peace. Hey, you know what? I got this really good idea. I think it's really going to help a lot of people. I feel really at peace about it, and I want to do something about it. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then you go and it's just like your mother. And this is the part we want to look, because that's the weak left leg.
Yeah.
Because the mother, and this, wow. And so the thunder's happening. And so, like, so, and so the mother, we want to look at that because that's going to be the one where you lose the boundaries. And it's going to be where you're taking care of everybody else that you forget to feed yourself and things like that. And so we want to have the mother be, I care for you and I love you, that. But we want to be able to have it basically come in there and look, and it's like, okay, this is my Achilles heel. And this is why I want everybody to look and see what are my three, what are the strongest that I have, because there's going to be one in there that's going to be the weakest. because your Achilles heel is that you'll get caught up making sure everybody else is okay to the detriment of yourself a lot. Is that fair to say?
Very fair. Very fair.
Yeah. And so what we want to be able to do is have the people that are closest to you, the people that are your confidants. Hey, when do I start to screw up? When do I start to lose me? When do I start to go and I'm working so damn hard and I'm working so damn hard and all of a sudden I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not flowing the way that I'm supposed to be flowing. I'm not creating the way I'm supposed to be creating because I've gotten lost. Does that make
Yes,
sense?
very much so. Yes.
So let's bring this all back again to the physical. Okay. So when we're sitting here and we're off to the left, okay, and we're in our down, okay, we're in that Achilles heel of ourselves, I can guarantee you that you'll notice things. And so we can look at certain things in our body. What is our saliva doing in our mouth? What's your saliva? What's your mucus and your yoni? What is she going to feel? What is she going to feel? What are you going to taste? What are you going to smell, of yourself? Even the perspiration. When we're out of our self, we're not going to be in that jam. Our skin's not going to look so hot. We're going to be all this stuff. And so when we start to feel crampy, when we start to feel moody, or when we have, oh man, my libido, did I leave that in LA? um, when's the last time I saw my libido? When we check into those things, we have to be, because seriously, and this is the thing where, you know, Christiane Northrup has gotten herself a bad name, politically and everything like that, ever since the COVID stuff. But before that, every single thing that she wrote, I just saw as God's honest truth. She was so just so right on all these different things, because she came from a very, very abusive marriage, and she had not the greatest life before that. And so she's sitting here and she goes, I'm an internationally respected OBGYN and I don't even know how my own body works. She admitted that, on Oprah. I don't even know how my own body works and I'm an OBGYN. And so she started to delve into this and she started to realize that when I'm having these aspects, when I'm not feeling good about myself, the dryness happens. When I'm not feeling good about myself, when I'm shaming myself, when I'm judging myself, or I'm letting others judge me, my libido is gone. My hot flashes and my night sweats, just are skyrocketing. She goes, how is it that I can go completely fine and all of a sudden I'm hot flashing? And she goes, what the hell? She goes, I'm giving a lecture in front of thousands of women and I'm having a damn hot flash. She goes, how can I be seen as an expert if that's happening to me? And so this is the part that I want you to be able to see, is that what she found out, and that all of us energy healers, because I started talking about this in 2002, didn't know about her until 2007. When we're out of alignment, our body's going to do this. Our body's going to do anything it can to get the attention. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And so when you're having no libido, when you're having hot flashes, night sweats, well, it's like, okay, hey, let's have a conversation and go within and feel. Do I feel safe? Probably not. And I tell people all the time to look it up in the dictionary and look it up in the thesaurus. What does it mean to feel safe? What does it mean to feel secure? Do I feel secure with the people that I want to trust, that I need to trust? And if that's not happening, we have to be able to either change in ourselves where we can feel that trust if it's really earned, or we have to be able to speak it, like Elisa was talking about. When she's okay and strong with her throat, then her systems are going to be okay. If she feels like she can't speak, her system's not going to be okay. And other people's bodies, there was a woman that I was working with, we were coaching, and she had gone through so much betrayal. Her ex-husband, she had worked, he ended up being this incredibly world-renowned famous author, because she worked her ass off doing all this business and everything like that and let him stay at home. Well, what she came to find out is that he would write for, 2 or 3 hours a day and then he'd go fuck the rest of the time to other women, not her. And so when she ended up with this betrayal and found out that he had siphoned off all the money, and she couldn't find, the favorite, walk. Where's the walk? Well, he had taken the walk and brought it over to his girlfriend's house. and all these different things. And then she's like, how come I don't feel pleasure anymore? How come I'm dry? And she goes, how come I'm moody? She goes, I'm never moody. Everybody knows me. I'm as stable as the day is long. I'm not moody. You know, if anything is moody, I'm going to go to happiness, you know, and exuberant laughter. How come I'm this way? Well, when she started to realize, oh, wow, I wasn't listening to my system, I wasn't listening to my body, then all of a sudden her body started to work again. Is this resonating for people? Do people see it and feel it? Okay. So what kind of questions come up for you right now? Yeah. So I'm going to go a little bit more and I'm going to talk about, you know, so the sex, the money, the food, the play, and the harm and the punishment. And the harm and the punishment, there's a woman that I'm working with, and amazing, you know, she coaches in her own way, business coaching and things like that. And she's very, very good, very, very compassionate, very, very empathetic, all these wonderful things. But when she comes in, she has that second cookie. She looks at herself like she's, you know, killed a puppy. I mean, she just is on herself like, you know, oh my God, I had another cookie. I shouldn't have had that second cookie. You know, I shouldn't have had that second glass of wine. And it's just like, okay, well, where is that harm and punishment coming from? Because you just had a second cookie. A second cookie isn't anything to rip you up and down. You know, it's you're not, you know, a diabetic, so it's not causing you any health problems. You know, why is it that you're ripping yourself a new one if you happen to have a second cookie or a second glass of wine? You're not driving. You're not responsible for any life-making decisions or life-saving decisions. Why is that harm and punishment coming in? And that's what we have to be able to do, is we have to be able to look and it's like, okay, so that archetype of ourselves that is our Achilles heel, the one that takes us down the most, where were the things in there about harm and punishment and judgment? Is that making sense? Is that resonating for everybody? Okay, cool, cool. So what we wanted to be able to do is we want to be able to look to see. It's like we want to be able to cut that off at the pass. And this is why it's so important. I mean, it's so, so important. Yeah, we have all of these different flavors, but I want you to look at the three for sure. What are the two that really rock, really, really support you? What's the third one that kind of does, but it's going to be that, you know, slip and slide, where it's just all of a sudden, you know, and you start to lose your power and you start to lose your focus. Does anybody else want to share? You know, Kathy or Lisa or Elan? Anybody? I know. Whoops. Olga is having trouble. She's actually listening as she's driving, and so she's driving from one side of Florida to the other. There's a big dead area right in the middle of the state. So, but hey, Kathy. Okay.
There. Sorry, just got home from work. And yeah, I'm absolutely identifying. And it's funny, as you're talking about the lover, I feel like I'm only the negative aspects of the lover and not the positive ones. Is that possible?
Oh my God, yeah. You know, and so what we want to look at is what are the things that because I was that, you know, where, you know, for me, the lack of focus, totally. And the vanity for me was beating up on myself. The self-flagellation, I was a fucking king at that. Nobody could self-flagellate better than me. I would rip myself into a new one, you know, and so when I would look at it, but when I would come into my power, when I had quote unquote the right, and I, instead of believing that everything that I was told, actually was magnetic. Actually, people were drawn to me. They did find me funny. They did find me attractive, you know, even when I didn't. And so I was that magnetic part. That creative part, yeah, you know, I mean, the landscaping I did at my house, I would, you know, always buy a house. I would, you know, flip the house. I would make it, took one of the ugliest around, made it one of the most beautiful around, did everything. The creative part was that way. The creative part with me was I can go someplace and I can see the prettiest thing that's happening, you know, flowers, birds, houses, even what people are wearing. The lover, I'm completely that. But before I gave myself permission to do those, because my mom, if I saw somebody as attractive or I thought somebody had a pretty dress on, well, only physical appearance was that, you know, it's like, look at me, I'm your mother, and you know, and she would shame me because I found somebody attractive, because my mom, you know, didn't find herself attractive. She always found herself overweight, frumpy dumpy, in her own words, you know. And so I was, you know, chastised for being that exuberant person. I was chastised for being that erotic person, finding the beauty in everything. And so for yourself, you know, and also being the woman, you know, with that lover, it's like, okay, well, and so what I would challenge you, you know, Kathy, is when I look at it, the person that that's interesting. The person that I would really, really look at is your queen, because I think that your queen is the strongest part.
Yeah.
There's nobody more loyal than you. Okay. There's nobody that is a leader. I mean, there's nobody that could get a co-leader better than you. You can co-lead perfectly. You know, you can go like this when somebody's there. You know, if somebody's falling, you can pull them back up. If somebody's pushing, you can, you know, you're an incredible co-leader. And you're very, very genteel when you have to call somebody on the carpet. And you do it very, very carefully. So the queen, you rock, okay? But at the same time, you know, as the queen, you don't demand that respect, okay? And so when you get jealous, you get quiet. When you, and this is the part where you're totally a mystic, you know, you're queening your mystic, you know, we're literally are doing the two-step, you know, because you got that confidence, the creativity, you are creative. Everything about you creative. You have to be creative, okay? And your inner peace and your soulfulness, all of that time in nature, all that time in rejuvenation is totally you. But then the introvert, you know, the social isolation. And so those are the things that we want to look at. And so then when we look at it, with the lover, what I would look at is, and you know, so whenever I cough, it has to be talked about. What I would look at, and this is something that I challenge each and every single one of you, because when we talk about the sex, the food, the money, you know, the play, those are the things we want. It's like, okay, how do they show up in my life? How do they show up in my life? How do I call them in? Do I just, oh, you know, I smell a restaurant. Oh, hi, I'm at a restaurant, you know? It's like, you know, we wouldn't go blind to a restaurant, you know? We'd like, okay, I see this restaurant. Okay, I really want Thai. I don't want to have a steak tonight. I want to have some Thai food. We would go there, and then I would come in. It's like, okay, I want some massaman curry, you know? We would order, we would say, this is, I deserve this. I deserve to ask, I'm going to pay, you know? And so, Kathy, what I would really go in is like, what if I was the gutsiest of the gutsy, what would I demand? What would I demand? You know, we got the sex, the food, the money, the play. So when I have that boyfriend, when I have that significant other, what's it like? What do I want? You know, and really go into that, but go into it with the queen. The queen's the one that's doing it. The queen's the one that's doing it. I don't settle for shit. You know, it's like, I don't take any talk back, you know, I got to be up in the kingdom because, and when I say up in the kingdom, you know that with your friends, you have to be in that high vibe. If your friends are in that low vibe, you just sit there and you just become almost like a church mouse because you don't want to leave them, you don't want to abandon them, but you also can't go for the BS. Fair? Yeah. So what I would look at is how would the queen and that mystic, because what's happened very, very often is you get a mystic, and is there any substance there? You know, and you get a mystic, and then they have the emotional rigidity.
Yeah.
And this is something that we want to look at too. And this is where I could talk about this for days, you know. And this is why I coach again. Because, you know, for example, you know, when you enjoy a mystical gentleman, okay, but when they're too much that, you've experienced emotional rigidity. You've experienced where they introvert so much that they socially isolate. And you're sitting there, knock, knock, is anybody home? Does anybody want to play? Does anybody want to go for a bike ride? Or anybody want to go skiing? And, you know, they're all holed up. So, and this is, everybody look at your three best, your three best archetypes. And then look, it's like, okay, if a significant other is really your jam, or if you're in a relationship, look at your 3 best archetypes. It's like, okay, cool. I got a king, and this is the king. Huh. The king isolates a shit ton. I don't like isolating, I don't like that kind of stuff. So being willing to look at it that way. Is this making sense? Is this kind of decipherable for everybody?
Oh, you're spot on for me.
Okay, and I can see some people raising their hands. Okay. So be willing with love, relationships, sex, career, money. Really, after this, look at your journal, look at your vision board. What ways do I want to tweak this? What ways do I want to rip something off? It's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was looking through the bad eyes of the queen when I put that one down. I didn't realize that I was looking through my wounded mystic, when I said that I want that so bad. So look at it, fresh eyes, fresh heart, fresh love. And this is the thing where it is so, if we go back to the Dalai Lama says, you all are going to be the savior of the world. But what if you're having a hard time, getting yourself, through the week? How are you going to be able to save the world? And this is the part where it's like, okay, let's be self-focused. What do I need? Because when I hopped out of that jester, went over to that king was toxic, abusive, disgusting, inconsiderate. I had to look at the things I didn't want to be.
Mm.
And I wanted to be that guide. I wanted to be that one that everybody could trust for rightful reasons. And so I had to be able to stand into that. And I needed to joke my ass off in the process. Because if anybody that's hung out with me long enough, you know that I'm silly and I'm goofy. And it's just like, did you really mean to say that? That's me. That's a part of me. That's a part of my blood. And when I do that, it's amazing. But when I don't allow myself that flexibility, I can find myself being the king that's not enjoyable. The king that is like, oh, okay, cool. I'm gonna go to the next town, that kind of stuff. So, what kind of questions do people have?
I just have one question: is there a place where we can get the list of the archetypes with all the sort of qualities?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I can send you actually the ones, and I have some that I've written out, but I won't be able to send them to you probably until next week because I'm still in the process of working on this other project real much.
Okay.
But you can Google them, but when you do, or Chat GPT, or Kathy, what's the one that you like?
The chat GPT is going to be good for this.
Okay.
I'll help you put something together. I've already been thinking about it, Joe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I had done some stuff like that, and because the answers are just as good as the search engine and what the search engine is focused on. And so 2 years ago when I was doing this, I sat down for an entire afternoon and I was Googling, the different results and looking at the different books. And there was some where they had an excellent queen, but they sucked at the idea of what a mystic was, And so I looked at those and I went through with those. And so I could find them and bring them up, and then I can, but look at them and see and enjoy the flavors, because it's just like, okay, I love a chocolate chip cookie, but not like that. Yeah, I had a chocolate chip cookie and I'm like, really? That's a chocolate chip cookie? Okay. If you say so. And so, and this is the part where it's so unfortunate that in school, we don't teach kids, especially girls, you have amazing power inside your body. And Creator gave you this amazing power, this amazing strength that's accomplished in at least 7 different ways. At least 7 different ways that you can accomplish every single thing that you want to. Do it your way. Because if we took everybody here, even if I said that everybody was, the queen, the mystic, and the lover, even if I did that, each of you are going to have different strong points in the queen, the different strong points in the mystic, and different strong points in the lover. And you're also going to have different weaknesses with that too. And so, and this is things where, Cass and Susie, it's, perfect example. You got the three of you growing up in the same household, and it's like, really, we did? you know, because, and that's the thing. I mean, me, my brother and sister, and you sit down and you talk to everybody, and everybody's got a completely different resonation, of what life was. And so, the things that my brother enjoys, just like, okay, I'm sorry, I can't handle that. I mean, seriously, one of the things my brother loves to do is listen to baseball games. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But for him, he loves it. I'm just like, you got to be nuts. But for my brother, he would hate walking the beach, on a July day in Florida. He would hate that. He would feel that he was being punished. And for me, that warmth, that heat, that moisture, the salt, the way that it smells. I mean, I'm really very, very central. And the way that the ocean smells in July is completely different the way the ocean smells in March. It's even different between July and August about how the ocean smells and what you feel as you walk and what you feel with the wind. And for me, July is incredible. Yeah. August, I'll be in the water instead of walking. I'll swim the entire month of August, as long as you got to be careful about the sharks that time of year. But look at what you like, look at what really, really turns you on, and feel that. And it's so important to, one is, please look up the Energy Mastery Power Positions. So I'm going to talk about a couple of them here before we end. The Energy Mastery Power Positions, the one that everybody should be doing is the Google movement. It's the very first one, and very, very simple. You simply roll your shoulders a little bit back, you tilt your chin 10 degrees, and then simultaneously do a Kegel and a glute squeeze. And as you do that, you're going to feel the energy come up from your root chakra, and it's going to come up, and it's going to come up and come up and come up. And when it hits your heart, it usually just blows through you. Okay, blows right through your crown. And then you release, you take a step back, and you take a step forward. It's going to increase all your physical stability. So if you're feeling discombobulated, if you're feeling anxious, you're feeling angry, whatever, do this, and it's going to bring you back to your physical power. It's going to increase your intuition. It's going to increase your feeling of safety, your hand-eye coordination. It's going to affect all that. And the second one that's so important is putting your hands over your genitals and your hands over your heart. Because when you do that, you're engaging that first and second chakra. You're engaging all the nerves that are there, and you're bringing this beautiful circle from the love of your heart, to that of the genitals. And so it's really bringing that energy into a really incredible focus. And then skipping to the last one that's on there. In this, I started recommending in 2002. And like I said, I didn't even know about Christiane Northrup until 2007. But she talks about taking the energy center of your palms and putting them over your nipples. And the reason I did this is I was telling my clients back in 2002 to release the breast of burden, the beast of burden, all the shit that was put onto you, all the stuff that's not you, all the harmful words, all the judgments, all the physical, attacks, the sexual, whatever. When you do this, what's coming is because when you do this, you're yourself, you're you can't help but feel that. And what ends up happening is the left and the right, they all talk back together, and it brings this, and your body's like, and what will happen is, if there's traumas and if there's things that hurt, if there's sadnesses, as you do this, it'll come off the body. And so I asked you, if you do this, she says, if you do it 2 to 3 times a day, 2 to 3 minutes at a time, she says, I will guarantee you in 10 days, you'll have better looking skin because your hormones are going to be better off. And that, if you ask any veterinarian, if your animal has a good looking coat, they know that the hormones are running right. So that's what she says when you do that. For me, I know that when people do it, they will release the harms, they will release the traumas that have happened to them over the years. And it's really amazingly powerful. And I cannot tell you the strength that will get you. And the others are cool, they're great for a lot of different reasons. But doing those, and then look at the top 3 again, and look at the things that are the best about them, and then look at the things that are worst about them. And because, like Kathy's example, the queen, yeah, rock on totally. Loyalty, leadership, co-leadership, kick ass. Okay. Um, you know, vindictive. I don't know if you even know how to spell the word. It just is not. It's not in there. It's not that. But feeling like you're never enough, that comes up. Okay. The jealousy, you're not going to be jealous about them, but you're going to be like, God, what is it about me that's not having this? I want them. And so we want to be able to look at it. It's like, okay, how do we deal with those? How do we work with those? And that, and feeling that. And with the mystic, again, feeling that confidence, creativity, or inner peace, soulfulness, that's totally your jam. That's like your, the creamy stuff in a Bismarck, or a Long John, or Eau Claire. I mean, it's not gonna be the Eau Claire without that stuff in there. But it's also something where if you have too much of that, the introvert, the social isolation, and so if you're not sure, check out the people around you. Check out the hurt relationships that you've had. Which relationships have sucked? Which relationships have hurt the worst? And that's some of the stuff that what I've done is I've looked at in my life, which are some of the relationships that brought me down the worst, the hardest. And I look at those and say, okay. And then I know which of my archetypes to work stronger on, which of my archetypes to hear, like beep, 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 fire alarm, danger, Will Robinson, to be able to listen to those and shed them. Is this making sense? Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so before we wrap up, so every single Monday night from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock Eastern time on Monday night, I do a complimentary blissful meditation. And I call it that because in 2001, when I was forced to lead the meditation by my mentor, and he was actually in the parking lot, but he had told the people he wasn't going to be there. And he had two people make me do the meditation because I used to be incredibly shy, incredibly shy. And he saw in me the gift that I had. And so he asked the dozen people that were there, once he came in, he says, okay, what's the one word that you got out of Joe's meditation? What do you feel in you? And they called blissful. And so that's what I call is blissful meditation. We do the guided meditation and we do the healing, and it's amazing what ends up happening. The angels will come in like crazy sometimes. The messages will come in, and people do feel blissful. They'll feel relaxed. And so any Monday that you want to join me, just let me know. And I can send you the link. And then on April 3rd, I'm going to be having another webinar, and I'm going to be talking about wisdom, wellness, and wealth. Okay. Because we have to be wise to the subconscious blocks that we have. We have to understand the blocks that are causing us the problems. And the wellness, every single person feels physically, emotionally, and spiritually healthier. And the wealth is like Napoleon Hill talks about. We do not mastermind for money. We mastermind to become better people. And as a result, the universe rewards us financially. And so that's what my coaching program is called, is excuse me, Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth. And that one is April 3rd. And it'd be great if you can join me and invite your friends. And then anytime that you guys would like, I do have one-on-one sessions with people, and I do the coaching as well, and totally open to it. And I just appreciate you guys coming. I appreciate you letting me record this so I can share it with others. And any last questions or anything anybody wants to say?
Thank you, Joe. It was very informative and I learned a lot.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. That was amazing. Sorry, what time is the blissful guided meditation so we can work it back?
It is Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Thank you so much. That was
Amazing.
wonderful.
Look forward to April 3rd.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. You're the best.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Olga. I'm glad to see that you're able to come back on. Thank you very, very much. And,
yes, I appreciate you very much. And I had the amazing experience of having a healing session with you, and many coaching sessions too. And I highly recommend it because you tap into so deep and subtle layers that not everybody is able to do so, even though they're doing, the light work. And in my personal opinion and experience, I felt like I never felt before. And as I told you back then, it was a whole different new experience for me, of the healing. So I wanted to recognize you, appreciate you, and thank you for all of
Well,
that, everything that you do.
thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well,
Probably be on that Monday meditation too.
cool. Well, thank you. Thanks for all coming. And again, let your friends and relatives know about the April 3rd and the meditations. And because for me, with the meditations, everybody knows about the gang mentality and the gang energy. Well, spiritual gangster is the same thing. When we come in there with the idea of love, when we come in there with the idea of peace and relaxation, it just goes. And now that I've been doing it for a few months again, it just happens so much quicker and so much faster. And the angels are coming in more. And 2 weeks ago, it was wild the amount of angels that came on. But this last week, there was a lot of people that weren't able to make it. And so we had some, but it was really cool too, because we had some young kids in, and it was awesome to see the difference. So thank you, everybody.
I have a quick question, Joe,
Uh-huh.
just to wrap up. When you're having all these downloads and information for healing, who you channel, or how you know who is guiding you, if there's any beings that guiding you at all?
Well, I always put it out, to creator, God, source, and then, I happen to, I'm so very, very careful about it, because Christianity has become a really filthy word, and rightfully so sometimes, because Christians have a lot of ideas. But when I look at Jesus in his own truth, in his own words, he says, "Love your neighbor." That was the most important thing. Love God and love your neighbor. And so what I do is I put out the prayer and the intention to only see what I need to see, only hear what I need to hear, and only feel what I need to feel, and then only say the words that I need to. And so when I do that and I go around the room, what will happen is I'll see that this person needs love, and this person needs order, and this person needs relaxation. And so I'll use those words and I'll say them. And what happens is everybody's energy joins into the creative part. And this is the part when I do group healings, it just kicks ass. I mean, people just feel amazing. And so I just open up, and ever since I've been doing the healing work, when I first started to see the angels, I just saw them as these little blips of light that were this bluish, whitish, crystalline, sparkly energy. That's how I saw the angels at first, and I just felt it. And the only thing I could think about it, and so my mentor, she was saying, and she was asking me questions, and it was like, yeah, it's the angels. And then what ended up happening, and I've come to find out that it used to be written about in different books, that there's three types of angels. There's the light angels. There's the angels that are the normal size, 5 to 6 feet tall. And then there's the angels that are like 13 feet tall. And I'll feel all of those. And then in combination, what will happen is the people that have passed away, your friends, your relatives, they'll come in. But it's wild, because 2 weeks ago, what ended up happening is one woman's grandma came in, and she brought this feeling, and it was wild because I said, I just feel this lambskin, and I smell cookies. And I said, that's what I told her this afterwards. And I said, she came in, and I said, I just kept on feeling this lambskin, and the cookies. But I said, she came over here and she was helping this other girl that was having these problems, and she kept on sending all this energy. She goes, that's my grandma. She goes, she always finds the one that needs the help the most. And so that's what I do. And as far as channeling, when I started to have the gift, I just wanted to go to source. I just, and so I just really feel that God, creator, source, however you want to say it, that's who I put the final word out. And then when I hear the words, I've heard so many people over the years where they will, quote unquote, interpret, or they'll put their gist on things. I'm like, no, 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 no. If they come in and they say a word, like I was working with somebody years ago, and they said, go down the corridor. I'd never say corridor. I'd say go down the hall, you know. And it says, go down the corridor. And they said there was a photo album, bottom right of the closet, and it's going to be a white photo album, 3 pages, or, you know, 3 pictures across. The answer is going to be on the 15th page, top photo, third on the right. And so I said that specifically, you know, I didn't marginalize or anything. She went down there because what it was is she had felt guilty when she was nursing her last brother through death. Both her brothers and one of their very best friends died of AIDS, and she nursed them through that process. And she felt like she hadn't done enough. And that 15-page top photo, third on the right, was him giving her a kiss goodbye. So if I would have, you know, put my spin on anything like that, and the real thing too is that when he was speaking, and it was wild because I says, your brother Michael, and she goes, I don't have a brother Michael. I says, yes, you do. She goes, no, I don't. And I said, there's something I'm gonna say. I would never ever say this ever to anybody. You need to understand that, but he won't stop saying it. So please let me say it. And know that I would never ever ever say anything like this to anybody in the world. And so she said, okay. And so I shared it, and her brother was a very exuberant, boisterous, gay guy, very flamboyant. And he would say this really horribly derogative comment to his sister in an act of love. And she started laughing, saying, oh my God, it is Michael. And so the last 6 weeks of his life, his name was Stephen, and he always wanted to be called Michael. And so that's what ended up happening is that she called him Michael for the last 6 days of his life. But I had to say that horribly despicable saying that I could never do. But when I said it word for word, it made all the difference in the world. And her migraines went away, and she never had another migraine ever, you know? So that's how I see it. That's how I work with it, is I just put out the prayer and the meditation. What do I need? What do they need to hear? And so I hope that answers your question. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'll let you all go, and hit me up if you have any comments, if you have any questions, you know, DM me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks a lot, and take care.
Beautiful night, Joe. So rich.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I enjoyed it. Thanks.